conversation with me, Doug Pagitt, your host for the entire 2.5 hours, and joined by co-host Tony Jones. So if you're listening in, you're just gonna keep on listening. You're welcome to chat your way in on the chat room, make comments about the video. You're also welcome to call in 646-929-1199. And David, we see your call there. Tony's gonna make one more mention, and then we'll put you on. So hang on a second.
One thing, Doug, that's interesting is that Ahmadinejad, the president of Iran, is a notorious Holocaust denier.
Yeah.
Obama addressed that
specifically
in his speech, right?
I heard that, yeah.
Okay. He's up for re-election in Iran as president right now. Mm-hmm. And this just, I think, shows the power of Obama doing, what will clearly go down as an enormously historic speech, like up there with Gorbachev, tear down this wall, and Ich bin ein Berliner, and like some of the big, and so he does this in Iran. What it served to do, even in the last week, is it bolstered the campaign of Ahmadinejad's primary rival, who is not a Holocaust denier and who's running ads on Iranian TV saying, this is hurting us in the world, denying the Holocaust. And the past, I saw Ann Curry on the NBC Nightly News. Ann Curry was in Iran. She did some 2-hour special, but they just showed a clip in which she interviewed the former Ayatollah, the chief religious leader of Iran. And he says, I'm on the record, the Holocaust happened. Yeah. It was a horrific, sin of humans against other humans. Yeah. So, you just wonder between that guy and Obama if Ahmadinejad, I don't know that he loses. I don't know that they even have fair elections in Iran.
Or that it matters what the president does. But I hope if there's a new president that he's also a casual, snappy dresser.
Like Ahmadinejad.
Yeah, because a guy who goes open collar.
Open collar with a trimmed beard.
Yeah, with a trimmed beard.
As opposed to the big...
Yeah, for all the rest of his obvious lunacy.
Speaking of the Holocaust...
At least he's...
Speaking of the Holocaust, let's talk about abortion.
A snappy dresser. Dave, thanks for your call. We got a caller from the 402 area code.
Is that Colorado?
Howdy ho, Dave. David?
Hey there, Tony. How you guys doing?
All right.
Real good.
All right. Hey, thanks for your call. As you know, all of you are welcome to be a caller here on the show, 646-929-1199. Poor David has had to wait for about an hour and a half to get on the line here because the lines have been so full. No, it's because the topic changed. But this is a fine time. So, Dave, what are you thinking?
Well, it's just that I was listening to the show week, and you guys were talking about abortion, an urgent topic at the time, and there was the analysis or the comparison of Christians and legislation and convincing and things like that, and sort of comparing how we relate to homosexuality with how we relate to abortion. And just at first glance, or just kind of as a throwaway line almost, I kind of heard that. I was like, no, I think I disagree with that in the sense of those two things not being the same thing or impacting people that aren't in play, if you will. But at the same time, I'm this close to agreeing with you. I'm really in process on this issue. And so I just wanted to kind of hear more of the story version, or how you guys got to where you're at on this issue. And, just kind of, at this point, I technically disagree with you, but whatever. I'm just interested in...
the argument that I was trying to make last week was, when you try to argue the abortion question from a constitutionality standpoint, that's where you run into the issues of privacy and protection of the mother, and it can't be legislated from a constitutional argument, I would suggest. From a moral argument, and if our country decides, you know what, the morality of this issue overrides the constitutionality of this issue, then there will be an amendment to the Constitution. But short of a constitutional amendment, which no one that I know of is pushing for in any legitimate way any longer, then we're now going to end up with issues of abortion becoming moral choices that someone has to make as opposed to legislative choices. So that's I'm not arguing the similarity of the two. I'm saying that to take the approach of it being a constitutional question is what runs people into the troubles that they run into.
Gotcha. And I'm a concept scholar at all. I've studied ethics and things a bit, but
right. Which I do think. I mean, frankly, I think someone should be making the ethical argument as opposed to the constitutional argument. But then you're not going to get there with a federal statute. You're going to have to get there with state statutes. And this is what I know some of the folks are arguing is they're trying to say, but Roe versus Wade creates a federal limitation that if you removed that, then state legislatures could make their decisions of this on a moral level. So they would argue we have to remove that limitation for states to make the determination of abortion rights and to and that's why they're trying to argue about the improper grounds on which Roe versus Wade was argued. But that is a two-step dance that's we're not. It doesn't seem based on the current, even the most conservative justice's view of stereodicis, which is the argument that when law has existed, then it has precedence. It's going to be very difficult with those judges and the feelings that they've advocated to overturn Roe versus Wade. So now we're going to end up with a moral issue and not a constitutional issue.
So just educate me real quick then on the Constitution a little bit, and then you get back to the old debate about personhood. But if we assume for a second, or if the national consensus was that there was personhood at some point prior to delivery, I mean, that's another whole other issue, but why wouldn't the Constitution apply to protecting that person as well?
Well, it would. Do you want to comment?
Well, I mean, there are a couple. The government, I would be shocked if the federal government ever weighed in on when life began prior to delivery. Because if you say life begins at conception. See, now you leave kind of the moral for the scientific, and it becomes a scientific argument, which the Supreme Court is really almost never. They're just not going to weigh in on something like that. The fact of the matter is that for every abortion that takes place, there are probably 10 to 20, if not dozens more than that, conceptions that take place, but the fertilized egg does not, get grab onto the fallopian tube and begin to develop. So if the whole life, if life begins at conception, then billions of quote unquote human beings die every year who are unborn. Well, yeah. So that seems...
The Catholic Church's history on this issue is pretty interesting and pretty ambiguous a little bit. I mean, you go back, 1,000 years or so, issues of, it wasn't clear. They were talking about ensoulment and things like this, and quickening, when the child is, they can feel the child, and so I don't think it's clear at all. I wouldn't want to go in that direction, but just
what I think the Supreme Court's not going to do, and I think the big issue, and it would be the same issue in a state court, is does the right to privacy in the due process clause of the Constitution, is that more or less important than the individual right to life? And that's just an unresolvable argument.
Yeah, and
is the right to privacy of the woman and what she can do with her own body, and what pro-lifers would say is the life of that unborn fetus, which isn't able to articulate for itself and defend itself, that our society needs to step in on that behalf, and that right is more fundamental, constitutionally speaking, than the woman's right to privacy ensured by the due process clause of the Fourth Amendment. But I don't think that's